welcome or welcome back. I am Corinne, and on this channel we like to explore a cozy and creative life. If you can hear little tip taps and panty breath, my dog Darcy is coming in and out, and I've tried to do this a couple times without her like coming in as soon as I start talking, but yeah, that is the background here. So today we are going to have kind of a focused video, which sometimes I like to share, just day in the life, day in the creative life kind of stuff. But today I'm going to show you how to make, or how I make, needle felted hearts. Over the weekend, I started thinking about something little and light and flat that I could stuff into an envelope and send. And I started thinking about needle felted hearts. So I sat down, and within the span of one episode of Amy Poehler's Good Hang, the one with Ina Garden, which was phenomenal, I managed to make a whole bunch of felted hearts. And it was so easy, and it was really fun to do. So I thought I'd share the process with you today. So I've got a mug of tea, a bunch of wool, some needle, and other materials that I'll show you in a second. And yeah, let's get over to the counter and get started. Okay, so we're playing around with some camera angles today, so bear with me. But I thought this was just such a fun, easy activity that is honestly a great stress reliever, because we're going to use a needle and we're just going to like stab wool in the shape of something. And I will say the needles are very sharp. I have a Band-Aid, and I definitely stabbed myself a couple times yesterday when I was not paying attention. So this is an activity to bring some mindfulness and thoughtfulness to. Age appropriate, of course. You know your kids, you know yourself if you should be trusted with sharp objects. But what we're gonna do, like I showed you over there, we're gonna make some needle felted hearts. These are so sweet and so easy to make. You can use them for just about anything. If you want to just set them around the house for little decorations, string them together as a garland, thread a piece of ribbon or string through the center, and just have a hanging ornament. The sky is the limit with things you can do. I am not super skilled in this area. I know how to needle felt. I have done a handful of needle felting projects, and that is kind of why I wanted to share this with you, because it's such a great entry point to felting. I have a bunch of yarn left over from, or a bunch of wool left over from some kits that I bought a few years ago. We bought two and made one piece of artwork for each set of grandparents. And so we bought a needle felting kit that had a design laid out for it, and it came with the appropriate colors of wool. That's where my needles came from. And it was a fun activity that all four of us were able to do. And so we all put some labor and effort and love into those pieces of art for the grandparents. And it was a really sweet activity. So most of this wool that I have is left over from that. But I also had just some roving yarn in my yarn stash from another project. This yarn is Valley Yarns Berkshire Bulky, and this is alpaca, but it's a very minimally processed wool. And so I tried this out yesterday, and that's the other thing that I'm going to remind you of, is just to play and have fun. This yarn, without me unspinning it or doing anything to it, created this heart. So the texture is a little bit different, and I like it. It's a little bit ropey. It's a little bit, I don't know if you can see the edges, like it's just a little bit funkier. And I think it gives it a neat texture. So use what you have. Go to a local your local yarn store, your local hobby store, and you should be able to find some materials pretty easily, or of course you can find them online. So I have the wool, the needles, a foam board, because you need to put it onto something as you're stabbing because the needle is going to go through it, and so you don't want to do this on the counter. You don't want to do this on a really hard surface because these needles will break. And then I also have, because it's a specific shape I wanted, I'm using cookie cutters, heart-shaped cookie cutters. And I experimented a little bit with this yesterday. This is the kit that I bought during Vlogmas, and I used for the citrus peel. I think I used the star shape, and I cut out star shapes of orange peel and dried them and used them on my wreath. But there are these tiny hearts. There's 3 different size hearts in that. And then I have this other set from years and years ago that I used this as well. So I tried and kind of did some of all of them, and I don't have a favorite. When you are needle felting, the important thing is to watch out for your fingers, but also to go straight down with the needle. You don't want to try to like bend it or anything because the needle will snap, and that's a real bummer. That's happened to us, or that happened to us when we were working on our bigger art pieces. So those are 2 things to keep in mind. There's also all sorts of different types of felting. This is just super easy, super simple, and I think super accessible. Let's get started. So I've decided to use this cookie cutter for the shape. I'm going to use this unspun wool. So I like the color, I think it's really pretty. But I think this will be a good amount of wool, and it's always surprising to me how much you need for what you end up with. So I'm just gonna stuff the yarn into the mold. And really, I'm just gonna start stabbing, and you'll see what happens with the wool. What felting does is it connects yarn, or connects the fibers to each other. They mash together and stick. And you do that just by stabbing it into itself. So again, you can see, you want to be careful. And you want to go up and down, stabbing the yarn and bringing the wool in on top of itself. It doesn't take much time at all. And once you get most of the yarn into the mold, what I encourage you to do is kind of move it around a little, because it will start sticking to the foam beneath. And flip it over. And just stab away. And what starts to happen is your shape comes together. And at first you just kind of go all around, but then you'll be able to see where the yarn or where the wool looks fluffier. That's where you want to stab. So you want it to come together. And again, before you get too far, loosen it up from your foam, flip it over, and start again. And at this point, I'm starting to pay closer attention to the edges to make sure that they come together. I want to do as little felting as possible outside of the form to protect my fingers. But you can see how quickly it all starts to come together. I'm gonna release it, and I'm actually gonna pop it out so you can see it's already starting to form, hold its shape, and look like a heart. So I'm gonna put it back into the mold and keep going. I am not going to time-lapse this video because I want you to see about how long it takes to come together. It is so therapeutic to sit and stab something with sharp objects. Again, I'm going slower than I was yesterday because I don't want to stab myself on video. But it's, again, I'm reminding you to be mindful, be careful for your fingers and your body's sake. I'm also just lifting up the needle, like just past the top of the felt. See? So you can flip it and just keep going. I've seen some really cute snowflakes, like felted snowflakes, using, again, cookie cutters to shape them, which I thought was really clever, and I might do that actually with some of my white roving yarn. So I'm gonna flip this over maybe once or twice more, and then I'll show you how I kind of finish up the edges. But you can see it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's a nice mental break. We all have so much going on, and like I said in the last video, which was on going analog and setting up places in our house to create pockets of time and space for us to give ourselves a mental break. This is a great one. This is a great project to have on hand. And I find it to be helpful as a writer to have these little meditative practices, little brain breaks, because it allows stories to form, it allows ideas to come together in a different way, thoughts to percolate. You know, our unconscious brain is part of the creative process as well, and we need to give ourselves space. And so what we decide to fill our time with greatly impacts our creative lives. And I was just talking with someone this morning about how fantastic it is to have different types of projects that can open different avenues and pathways. So already, look at that. Isn't that adorable? Absolutely adorable. I'm not going to try to rip it. Actually, I can try to rip it apart. It doesn't really come apart. So what I do now is I want to make sure that the V in the heart is really obvious. So I'm going to go in very, very carefully and press that area down so that it's a little more defined. And so around the edges, if there's any place that the yarn or the wool, I keep saying yarn because as a knitter, that's mostly what I call it. where it's puffing out, I would take it and move it in. Again, gently, and you do want to be careful when you're moving things around with these needles because they're very sharp, they're very thin, they can break very easily. This one, there's not a whole lot to do to clean it up. And that is our finished felted heart. Now, one thing that you can do if you want to get fancier, I'm trying to find the one that I did yesterday, I wanted to play around with color a little bit. So I put a thin layer of pink wool on top of this yellow one and just felted it in to give it a little bit of color and playfulness. I'm gonna start a second one. I'm gonna use this teeny tiny little guy, which I think I was using when I stabbed my finger. So the smaller you go, the more careful you definitely have to be. And so you saw in this one, it didn't end up being terribly thick. I don't want mine to be super thick, but if you wanted it thicker, you just add more wool. If you wanted more color, just add more wool. You can mix and match and do really whatever your heart desires. So I'm gonna use this yarn, this feels like a little bit much, this red. And so I'm gonna start by shoving it in. And then I'm gonna take my needle once more and just poke. And I am going, I don't know if you can see, but for the edges, I'm going right next to the edge of the mold. That's when you want to be really careful with your fingers. Move it, you can see. And it's okay if it attaches itself to the mold or to the foam and it starts to get really fuzzy. You just, I'm gonna use the opposite end of the needle to push that down. You just felt a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna cut that because you don't need to see, but I definitely just stabbed myself again. It didn't go through, but just probably bruised a little bit. So that means I need to slow down again. Good time to stop. Let's poke this out and see what it looks like. And yep, see, I've got some fuzziness on this side, so I definitely wanna keep going. I'm gonna hold that, I'm gonna pinch that to show you just how cute this little guy is. So I've got a little bit more to do. And the smaller ones, yeah, they are a little fiddlier. So what you're hearing is really the needle going into the foam, not it going into the wool. And there we have it, a super teeny tiny little felted heart. Now I'll probably go back in and clean this guy up a little bit. Again, very carefully. So I'm just taking any fluff, pushing it in a little bit, and then going down on top so that it just makes a little bit of a little bit neater of an edge. Being very careful of my fingers, very careful of the needle. There we have it. So in the span of less than 20 minutes, there's two little, it's hard to get the camera to focus, two little felted hearts. Super easy craft, super satisfying, and something that again helps to connect us to our creativity, gives us some mindful time to let things percolate. We need more handcrafts, like ways to get ways to connect with the earth. And that's one of the things I really love about wool and knitting and any kind of fiber arts work, is it feels like we're connecting to something, I don't want to say primal, but it just natural. We're connecting to we're connecting to something ancient and something very wholesome. It's always, always, always so good to make things with our hands. It's, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself. It's satisfying. It's rewarding. It feels a heck of a lot better than scrolling on our phones. And for the purpose of these, I know that they're going to make some people smile when they open them up in their cards that I'll be sending later this month. So yeah, use them for garlands, use them as just having a bowl of hearts somewhere, use them for decorations, and, leave them around for other people to find. We need a little bit more love and heart and creativity in our world today. So on that note, I'm going to get back to it. I'm going to spend a little bit more time felting and drinking my tea. Thanks for joining me. Let me know in the comments if you've done any sort of needle felting. There's all sorts, right? There's wet felting, there's needle felting, we could probably have even wet the wool and use that as part of our practice. But for me, it's important to keep things simple. I feel like outside of knitting and writing, the things that I do need to be kind of simple. So happy felting, happy February. I hope you are well. I really and truly hope you are well. And until next time, stay cozy, be well, and I will see you very, very soon. Cheers, friends.